Now that we've covered the essential basics of an Excel spreadsheet, let's go ahead and use those to build something so that you can see how this all fits together. If you're going to build a spreadsheet, it's a lot easier if you start with a plan. And my approach is typically to put the headings in and then come back around and fill in the data. The spreadsheet that we'll build here is a really simple spreadsheet to calculate the cost of an electrical project that I have on my front porch. The project is that I want to add a couple of outside wall lights, and so we need to run some electrical, and the process of this will be that we're going to budget out how much we're going to spend for the different parts that we need. So if I had a piece of paper, I would write down a rough idea of what my spreadsheet is supposed to look like. Here I'm going to have a list of items where I have a description, a price, how many of those items I'm going to buy, and what the total is. And then at the very bottom we can total that, calculate the sales tax, and get a grand total, which would be our budget for our electrical project. So let's go ahead and get started and see what happens. I'm going to start by adding the headers. So here we have, I'm going to go into the spreadsheet and just start typing the headers. And I could put them right up against, I kind of like to leave a little space around on the side and the top, and I'm not sure that that's essential, but I'm going to start in B3. So I've clicked on cell B3. You can see that I'm in B3 because the name box is saying B3. And I'll type my first header, which is the item description. And then I'll follow that with, in C3, the quantity. So this is how many we're going to use. I'll click on D3 and put in the price. And then in E3, I'll put the amount. So here we have our headers. Let's go ahead and fill in some data and see what it looks like. So the first item that I need is 250 feet of 12-2 wire. And notice that when I type that in, it is bigger than the cell. So we're going to have to change the width of a cell. Something important to know how to do. If you go up to your column headings, so here you can see I have B and C, and B right now is selected. But if you go right between them, you get a different symbol, which is arrows pointing in both directions. Like it looks like I could click there and drag, and that's exactly what I can do. I can click when I see that symbol and drag and change the cell width by just using my mouse and dragging back and forth. There's also an auto width where when I see this cursor symbol, I can double click, and it will automatically set my cell width to whatever it needs to complete whatever it is that I happen to be typing. The quantity on that would be 1, the price would be $175, and we'll leave the amount blank for now. Let's add a second item. So we need some outside round electric boxes. And let's get 2 of those, and they will be $5 each. Notice again that my text is too long for the cell, and I could go up there after each one of these and double click. I'm going to wait until I have the whole column entered and then double click. That'll just be faster. So let's get inline, remote, and switch, and outside wall lights. By the way, notice what happens when I started typing the word outside. Excel automatically looked up the whole column of items that I had here, and it said, oh, look, there is something else that starts with the letter O, and you've only typed the letter O. What if you want the same thing? I'll just give it to you. And if I actually wanted it to say outside round electric boxes, again, I could simply hit Tab or Enter, and it would finish filling that in for me, and I would have outside round electric boxes. Now, I don't want that. Instead, what I want is outside wall, and as soon as I hit something that doesn't match with this previous cell, it's going to stop suggesting things because it doesn't know now what I want. But I can finish typing that. What happens if I do a third cell that starts with outside? At this point, it doesn't know which one to copy because it's got outside round and outside wall. So if I continue to type outside and then I hit the letter W, now it'll finish because it says, oh, it could be that, and maybe you want that again. Had I put an R there, it would also give me outside round electric boxes. At this point, I don't want any of those things, but I do want to show you how to clear a cell. So I'll jump off of that. Here we had outside and then nothing. If I want to clear that cell, I can click on it. So for me, it's B8, and then I can simply hit my delete key, and the cell is now empty. All right, let's finish our quantities. So I need one wall switch, and I need 2 outside lights. The wall switch itself will be $15, and my outside lights will be $65 each. So there we have a very simple spreadsheet, but it doesn't do a lot of good yet because we still need to calculate the amounts and then get a total. So to calculate the first amount, we need to create a formula, and the formula starts with an equal sign. And then what I want to do is multiply my price times the quantity. So here I will click on the quantity, which is C4, and I'll multiply that times the price, which is D4, and then I can hit enter. And the beauty of doing that, as opposed to just saying equal 1 times 175 or just typing 175 in here, is what if we get a better deal, we go to the other hardware store in town and they're like, oh, I can give it to you for 160. So if I change the price in this column, it will automatically recalculate there when I hit enter. And you can see that that now adjusts because my formula is using cell references and not the hard-coded numbers. Now I also want my formula for these next 3 lines, and I could go to the next line and I could do the same thing, equal to C4 times D4, equal to C5 times D5, and that would give me the correct answer. But there's another approach, so I'm going to undo that, Control Z. I can also copy this down, so I can copy it and then paste it down, and it will take the formula and allow it to work for each of these rows. So I can do that. To do that, I'm going to right-click on my amount, choose Copy, and then go to the next cell down, and I can right-click and choose Paste. And now, if I double-click on that cell, you'll see that it's C5 times D5. And that might raise a question to you, which is, look, the formula that I copied is C4 times D4, but when I moved it down a row, it changed the formula for me to C5 times D5. And what Excel does is when you copy a formula, it looks at the row and the column names of the cells that you're copying, and if you copy down, it will add 1 to them. If you copy right, it'll add 1 to the letter. So in this case, when I copied down, I added 1 to the row number. It went from 4 to 5. Had I copied it to the right, so here I'm going to copy it to the right, which doesn't do me a lot of good, but you can see how the formula reacts. If I look at that one, it changed it from C4 times D4 to here it changed it to D4 times E4. So it took the cell address and it changed the column letter by 1 because I moved my formula 1 to the right. Now I don't want that, so I'm going to get rid of it with a Control Z. But that means that I can copy this formula straight down and it will work for all these rows. There's an easier way than just copy and paste. If you look at your cell pointer, which is this green box, you'll notice that there's a little square in the bottom right corner, and if you hover over that square, your cursor changes from a filled in plus to just a looks like a bold plus. If I grab that when it's the bold plus and drag down, it will automatically copy the formula and drop it into the next cells. So here you can see that my formula If you look up in the formula bar, you can see that my formula is correct in each cell. It's also interesting to note, if you double click on a cell, that Excel will look at your formula and it will highlight the different cells in your formula with different colors and then use those colors in the formula as well. So here C7 is blue and the cell C7 is highlighted blue, D7 is red, and the cell D7 is highlighted red. So there is my formula. That's working great. Now I want the sum of this column. And we know that there's a sum function, and the sum function works to add up a group of numbers in a range. My range in this case would be those cells. Oops, let's try that again. My range would be those cells, which if I was going to write that down would be E4 colon E7, meaning all the cells from E4 to E7. If I want to quickly get the sum, I can click in the bottom of the column and go up to my ribbon, go to the Home tab if I'm not already there, and then on the right end of it you can see this auto sum. If I click it, it will automatically fill in the formula for me, and all I have to do is hit enter. And now we have our total, and I'll go ahead and create a heading so that we know this is the total expenses. But wait, we have sales tax, and then we'll have a grand total. So now my headings are in place again, and now we can calculate the sales tax and the grand total. In the state where I live, the sales tax rate is currently 7%, and I could calculate the sales tax by saying equal to, and then click on the cell, this is our total, and then multiply that times 0.07, and that would give me 2205. This will work as long as the sales tax doesn't change. If the sales tax changes, I would have to go into the cell and change my formula, which is a little bit painful, but the sales tax doesn't change that often. So now you have to make a decision. Do I create a named cell over here that says sales tax and put in 0.07? And now I can set up my formula to use that cell, which is J3. And then if the sales tax changes, I could go in here and say 0.075, and it will automatically update. Pretty nifty. Or I might say, well, the chance I'm using this is a very short-term project. I'm not going to need this spreadsheet 2 years from now. And I could come in here and just say 0.07. So it's really a judgment call at this point in time. I prefer as often as possible to use a named cell off to the side so that if something changes, then you can update it. But if I'm just whacking this together so I can figure out what my budget is for a project I'm going to do tomorrow, then that might be overkill, and it might be faster just to come in here and say 0.07. So you have to decide when you're building the sheet, but being aware of the trade-off at least that if I'm going to hard code 0.07 into my formula and the sales tax changes, my formula is going to be wrong, and I'm going to have to go back into my spreadsheet, figure out where it was wrong, and make the change. All right, so my grand total would be equal to the total expenses, which is E8 plus the sales tax. And now I can hit enter. And there's my grand total.